society has a different view maybe of what constitutes change makers. And I think there's maybe these kind of three key ways that society gives us a view that we can make change. Broadly speaking, you've got the sort of social inventor like Jenner here, inventing a vaccine. You've got the philanthropist like Gates, and you've got the sort of movement leader like Thunberg here. So I think that's it's great to see these high-profile, inspirational people, but sometimes I think it gives us a slightly limited view about what it is to be a change maker and how we can make change. What other ways are there? Well, actually, one thing I want to impress upon you is that you don't need to be one of those archetypes in order to make change. You might think, oh, well, of those three archetypes, I guess I'm closest to the inventor. So maybe I need to come up with some amazing technical innovation that's going to change the world, some big new app, some amazing algorithm that's going to help people. And if you can do that, fantastic. I don't want to turn you off that at all. But it might be that that's not what you're about or not where your skills are. And if that's the case, that doesn't really matter, because social impact isn't necessarily about inventing new technologies that have social impact. A lot of the time, it's about using technologies that are already out there and finding new uses for them, or even helping somebody that's doing something really good and really positive in their community with a bit of technology that's been around for years that they just don't know how to use. So, for example, the Shaw Trust, an amazing organization that does a lot in accessibility, they switched to Salesforce recently. They saw an increase of 31% in the number of volunteers signing up. Imagine the knock-on effect for that organization. And maybe that's within your skill set, Salesforce. Maybe you could help them do something like that. So it doesn't always have to be big new inventions. I think my favorite example of this is when the Blue Cross was struggling with falling donations. The Blue Cross is an animal charity, because people weren't carrying change in their pockets anymore. So not as many people were putting 50p in the head of the fiberglass Labrador outside of the shop. And they decided they needed to reinvent that. And what they came up with, because they didn't have the technology at that time to invent a whizzy new donation box that took contactless, they basically just sellotape to contactless card reader to a Labrador. And I don't know about you, but I want to pet that Labrador so much that if you said you can only pet it with your MasterCard, I would still be up for that. Another way that we can be a change agent is by not doing bad. So we can do actively good stuff, but a lot of us might think, when we think about social good and being a change agent, we might think about charity work and volunteering, but we might not think about, is there a way that we can be against bad things happening around us? And often that can be very powerful as well. So it's not all about doing good. It's also about doing no harm as well. Ideally, do both, but it could be that you're a change agent just by focusing on one of these things. Take this example here from Kat Hallam that I saw on Twitter, where she was trying to get her passport renewed, an already quite stressful process, and encountered what was probably a machine learning trained algorithm, which was actually prejudicial against black faces, couldn't recognize black faces as well as it could recognize white faces, which caused her to have to try lots of different photographs and eventually not be able to process her application online. Which is, of course, a disadvantage to her, just because of that. And that is an unacceptable piece of prejudice that is baked into the work of us as computing professionals. And these are things that not happen by intention, but they happen all the same because these issues are systemic. There's also opportunities for bad actors to use similar technologies. So we saw some researchers in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. They managed to create a machine learning algorithm that could identify whether some people were LGBT or whether they were straight, just from an image that might be publicly available online. And that is obviously hugely problematic that that technology is available off the shelf. So how do we make change? I've covered a lot of ground there. There's many different ways in which you can do it. I've highlighted on the screen 3 contexts here. I won't read them all out, but just to spotlight a few. You may already be making change through contributing to open source projects or standards like the IEEE Ethical AI standard that's currently in consultation. It could be that you code some clever side projects, volunteer for a charity or a board of trustees, or do all of these things. In work, though, think about the power you have at work, particularly the power to challenge inequalities and bias within the code that you write or the systems you create, and also the ability for you to push for corporate social responsibility. So for the company to do charitable projects or voluntary projects to help people in the community. And lastly, if you want to take this a notch further, I think it would be great if every computing professional worked for a charity or a social enterprise, even if it was just for 1 or 2 years, almost like a social sabbatical, in order to bring their skills into that world and be able to make change with it. So that's something that you could consider as well if you've got a real hunger and a real passion for this sort of stuff like I do.